It's honestly hard to wrap your head around the sheer scale of modern football. I mean, whether you call it football, soccer, or the beautiful game, it's a massive, truly global phenomenon. But how did we actually get from these ancient, muddy free-for-alls to a multi-billion-dollar modern science? Well, let's dive into this explainer and find out exactly how kicking a ball around a field transformed into literally the most watched spectacle on the planet. So, here is our agenda for today. We'll be looking at ancient rituals to folk football, codifying the modern rules, FIFA and global expansion, the evolution of tactics, and we'll wrap it up with the ultimate football legends. Right, to kick things off, pun definitely intended, let's ask a surprisingly complicated question. Who actually invented football? Because as it turns out, kicking a ball is a cross-cultural phenomenon, not just a British invention. For centuries, incredibly diverse cultures independently realized that kicking a spherical object is simply a whole lot of fun. And sometimes it was even a matter of life and death. Section 1. Ancient Rituals to Folk Football. The origins of the game are seriously global. Take Kuju, for instance, which goes all the way back to the 3rd century BC. It actually started as this rigorous military conditioning exercise during the Han Dynasty, using a stitched leather ball stuffed with fur or feathers. Then you have the ancient Greek game Episkouros, which was much more like a rugged, physical version of rugby. And way down in Australia, indigenous tribes played a game called Marngroke, where players would leap incredibly high into the air to catch a ball made out of possum skin. But if you want to talk about true ancient chaos, we absolutely have to look at Rome. Their game, Harpastum, was notoriously violent. It was so uncontrolled that the Roman politician Cicero actually recorded a bizarre and fatal barbershop accident caused by a runaway ball. I mean, imagine trying to explain that to an insurance company today. It perfectly captures just how completely lawless these early folk games were. It wasn't until much, much later that someone finally decided this madness needed a little bit of order.
Section 2. Codifying the modern rules.
Okay, so picture this. October 26, 1863. This is arguably the most significant date in the sport's entire history. A London solicitor named Ebenezer Cobb Morley essentially looked around and thought, all right, this is getting completely out of hand. Morley wanted to create a clear, unified set of rules for football, kind of like what the Marylebone Cricket Club had already done for cricket. So he gathered representatives from 11 different clubs and schools at the Freemasons Tavern in London and officially gave birth to the Football Association. Now, a really fierce debate broke out over two major rules from a rival set of laws out of Cambridge. They were literally arguing over whether to allow carrying the ball with your hands and, get this, whether to allow hacking, which meant violently kicking your opponent's shins just to bring them down. Ultimately, both carrying the ball and hacking were entirely banned. And that specific debate, that is the precise moment association football split off from what would eventually become rugby. So no hands and definitely no targeted shin kicking. Section 3. FIFA and Global Expansion. FIFA actually began pretty modestly back in 1904, founded in Paris by just 7 European nations. By 1930, under President Jules Rimet, they took a massive leap and launched the very first World Cup in Uruguay. But it wasn't until 1974 that things absolutely exploded. You see, FIFA had been struggling financially. They were almost completely broke, in fact, until Joan Havelange took over as president. He saw something that others just didn't. Football wasn't just a sport anymore. It was a global entertainment product. He transformed FIFA from a near-bankrupt organization into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, basically writing the blueprint for modern sports marketing. Think about the physical and commercial growth of the World Cup for a second. It is just staggering. Back in 1930, only 13 teams participated, mostly because European teams had to endure these exhausting, weeks-long boat trips across the Atlantic right in the middle of the Great Depression. By 1982, it expanded to 24 teams, finally integrating more African and Asian nations. And then we jump to this massive 48-team behemoth spanning 3 entire countries in North America for 2026. The World Cup basically grew exactly as global logistics and television rights grew.
Section 4. The evolution of tactics. As the business of football grew, the intellectual battle on the pitch evolved incredibly fast too. It basically turned into a high-speed chess match played on grass. Over the decades, tactical formations shifted constantly just to exploit the weaknesses of whatever the previous era was doing. We moved from the super offensive WM formation in the 1930s, famously used by Austria's Wonder Team, straight into the defensive locks of the 1960s, and then broke back out into the total fluidity of the 1970s. Let's break down those two massive contrasting philosophies that really defined the modern era.
First up, Catenaccio. This system turned defense into an absolute science. Pioneered at Inter Milan, the word literally translates to doorbolt. Teams would use a libero, which is a sweeper who roamed completely free behind a line of strict man-marking defenders, just to clean up any mistakes. It was super pragmatic, and yeah, it was often heavily criticized for being way too defensive, but man, it was incredibly effective at absorbing pressure and launching these lethal counterattacks. And then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we get total football, coming out of the Netherlands in the 1970s. Total football challenged all that defensive pragmatism by completely tearing up the concept of rigid positioning. It required immense technical ability, high intelligence, and crazy stamina from every single player. Because if a defender ran forward to attack, a forward or midfielder had to instantly drop back and cover their spot. It looked like pure chaos to the opponent, but it was beautifully structured for the team running it. Section 5. The Ultimate Football Legends. This sport has always been defined by its icons. I mean, going back to the 1930s, you had Matthias Sindelar. They literally called him the Mozart of football because of his elegant passing and brilliant intellectual approach, though sadly his life ended tragically in 1939. Then Pelé bursts onto the scene and wins an unprecedented 3 World Cups for Brazil. And of course, you can't forget Diego Maradona, whose raw, pure attacking talent completely captivated the globe. These guys were the singular heroes of their eras, and they left legacies that frankly seemed impossible to ever match. But then the 21st century happens, and it brings us something entirely different, an unbelievable 2-decade-long rivalry that pushed the absolute limits of statistical excellence, Messi versus Ronaldo. What makes this dynamic so endlessly fascinating is that they represent 2 entirely contrasting archetypes of what makes a perfect football player. When you look at the raw data, and this is updated through mid-2026, you see those contrasting styles perfectly quantified. Ronaldo's unbelievable athletic endurance and physical power give him the edge in sheer total goals, sitting at 974. Meanwhile, Messi's low center of gravity and absolute playmaking genius really shine through with a staggering 457 assists, 8 Ballon d'Ors, and 46 overall career trophies, including that massive 2022 World Cup win. It's essentially the ultimate clash of clinical efficiency against creative orchestration. So, considering this unbelievable journey we've just been on, from ancient, chaotic street games to hyper-organized, modern, data-driven formations, we really have to wonder what the future holds for the beautiful game. With tactical systems becoming increasingly rigid today, will the future of football be entirely dictated by the manager's system, or will there always be room for the individual brilliance of a superstar to break the mold? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, diving into football's history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.